welcome everybody. We do actually have an apology. Councillor Pauline Young is an apology. If someone's happy to move that, thanks Councillor Tozer, and seconded Councillor Taylor. Tozer and Taylor, yes. Tinker Tozer Taylor Spire, yes, okay. So seconded, so we'll move that, that's been seconded. All those in favour, that is carried. Councillor McDonald is with us, but Councillor McDonald is attending the meeting remotely, so can't see your deaf, but anyway, say hello. Yes, we know you're there, there we go. So that's good. Nice to have you with us. Even if not bodily, you're actually here in spirit. So, all right, we will actually move on with the agenda. Item 1, confirmation of minutes. It's a start item unless there was anything that anyone wished to raise there. No, everyone's happy with the minutes, that they're accurate. So we do actually have another start item, which is item 3. You're going to move the start items? You're not going to move the start items? You'd like to unstar 3. I was hoping that wasn't the case, but it's all right. I was tried to get it through quickly. All right, so if we can move item 1, which is start. So that's moved Councillor Tozer, seconded Councillor Gates, and all those in favour. That's a confirmation of the minutes. That is carried. We don't have any conflicts of interest that have actually been declared, so we can move straight on to item 3, which has been unstarred by Councillor Gates. Councillor Gates, over to you.
Thank you. I think for the benefit of us all, if the Director could just give a quick overview of why we haven't seen this previously in terms of this particular funding that's available through the tourism levy, and then I just have a couple of questions.
Through the Chair, Councillor Gates. So this funding is obviously arts and culture funding that is there to promote tourism. Last year we pulled this funding because of COVID and obviously the fact that we had limited opportunity for group gatherings and limited opportunity for a lot of the tourism at that time. We made that decision. I think the year before that this funding funded hotelling. So so it's not new funding if you want to track it back, and I think some of you remember maybe me pulling it for COVID, and maybe you might remember hotelling before that. Obviously the idea is to promote tourism, to activate different areas from it, and the difference between this and other grants programs is that the others are a not-for-profit, where this money will go to the private sector in terms of activating those areas for tourists.
Okay. I was a little... Well, I queried a couple of the suggested experiences that might draw tourists to our city that were listed on page 40. So quite clearly I don't want to name them, but I then, when I read further and saw that this is a process that excludes council in terms of any participation on the panel or in the screening of any applications, I wondered if that was a legislative requirement because it was grant funding. And then I further wondered because there was a suggestion put forward by Councillor Owen Jones at budget time that our community grants funding applications be screened through a new standing committee. And then from there I thought perhaps this is something that could go through a standing committee rather than in the way that it's been suggested that a panel make a decision, refer it to you, and then clearly we would then get an advice from the officers about what had happened after it had already happened. Yeah. So I just wondered about that process. It has been explained to me that it isn't a legislative requirement that it be handled in the way suggested, but that possibly it places councillors at arm's length of the decision making in terms of the grant. So I just wanted to let the committee know how I felt about it, and I guess it's similar to the RADF funding where yes. Sometimes we get a report and we, through our work on the ground, communicating closely with groups, sometimes we have an understanding of certain issues that maybe the officers don't, that it might be valuable that it be brought to the table. So I was hesitant to support another process that completely excludes us until after the decision has been made. But I'd be interested to know if I'm the only one who feels that way, and if so, then I'll accept, obviously, the decision of the committee.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Gates. I mean, yeah, the Regional Arts Development Fund, as you say, that basically those decisions are made, still comes back to us, though, doesn't it, as such? But it's really only for noting. I was saying it comes back to us, but it's really only for noting. So we're looking at the same type of thing for the same reasons.
So through the chair, so yes, I think the idea is that we bring it here for you to endorse the process, and this is the process. The legal advice that we have is in terms of, you know, from a Belcara point of view or from a conflict point of view, that this is best practice, but not legislative. So you're right. But, you know, that we have a panel of experts in the industry, we take their independent view, and then we bring it here to let you know what happened, but that's just the way we're suggesting to do it. It's obviously not the mandated way of doing it.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Tozer.
Having some interest in the creative sector, I think it is. I mean, I think the idea that it's at arm's length of councillors is actually probably a good thing, without wanting to have unnecessary conflict with Councillor Gates. I actually think that actually does make sense, even when, you know, we might not agree with the artistic merit of a particular project. I think that there is definitely a benefit. Whilst there is some risk, I think in most circumstances, observing the RADF grants, there has been some really great gold that may not have been supported by the subjective view of councillors, but has been and has ultimately resulted in really great outcomes. And I appreciate the reverse might be the case as well if councillors made the decision, but I'm just conscious that there is only a limited footprint of councillors in the creative sector, and the subjectivity of this subject matter is so. Yeah. So I've got to say I'm supportive of the process recommended for the sake of those degrees of separation between councillors and the creative outlets that are trying to promote creative tourism projects.
Yeah, look, I'm of a similar view, although I do understand where Councillor Gates is coming from, and there is a bit of expertise, you know, in the room as well when it comes to the arts. But from a conflict point of view, it could cause issues. I think if a councillor was even sitting on the panel, I mean, I've sat on a fair few of these. Councillor Owen Jones, I think, prior to when we have the art, what do we call them? The every 3 years it comes up the
triennial funding.
Sorry,
the triennial. No.
Yeah, for the arts, yeah. And you actually did that when it came under your committee. I think you sat on that panel, and then when it came to me, I sat on there too. But I don't know how you felt about But for the arts,
triennial, I think.
Yeah.
I was never lucky enough to be involved in making art selections, which is
Okay,
probably
I thought you were actually involved in that.
So,
but I remember one.
But I have some very strong views in regards to the community grants program, and my understanding was that the acting CEO was to bring forward a report in regards to some options in that space. So to me, it actually makes sense to at least see if there is the potential for a future standing committee to deal with community grants, that we just make sure that all opportunities, including the likes of this, is at least explored as part of that process.
So do we know when that report is coming back?
July, I think.
Okay, so it's not too far away. Okay.
There's a distinct difference between the recipients of grants being community associations, not-for-profit community associations, and commercial outlets. There is legislatively there's a difference, and I think that in the case that this program is actually commercially delivered, I think that creates a greater standard of risk than perhaps the community associations, where there's an established community benefit and a different type of organisational structure.
Yeah, I'm just going to go to Councillor Patterson. I'll come back to you, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Just two things. First one, I appreciate this is a different type of thing, but I'm curious, the beautiful Gold Coast lights on the M1, was that an arm's length committee process or was that decided by councillors?
I actually feel qualified to speak on this one. It was a panel recommendation, but council made the final decision. But as has been indicated in this room, I think because it was in the area that I represented, I had major concerns because I felt that people wouldn't be able to read the sign travelling at 110 down the highway. Those concerns turned out to be very relevant, but no one else, I just think everyone else was more inclined to think, not everyone, Councillor Owen Jones came with me and Councillor Caldwell, because we were all Northern Gold Coast representatives who perhaps had a heightened interest in what was being proposed for the north as opposed to what was being proposed in the south. It was even suggested that the same model used in the south be used in the north, which was just the G and the C, because that would have been visible. But for whatever reason, and primarily I believe because of exactly what is being said here today, that art is subjective and the view of the panel was considered worth respecting by most of the councillors. And so the majority of councillors supported the recommendation that came to us. And quite clearly it was a huge error. So, yeah, you don't like to see that sort of outcome, but it happened.
Yeah. Thank you. And then, so from that, I wouldn't mind getting some advice from the city solicitor on it regarding the conflict, because I do see some value in, you know, a resident representative perspective. For example, the lights. So I just would appreciate that. Maybe before council, doesn't have to be today.
We can get her on the phone.
Okay.
Could I perhaps suggest that, is there an urgency in dealing with this today? And if not, whether we could defer it pending further advice from the city solicitor and in regard to the suggested standing committee to consider grant applications?
Well,
if it's not urgent.
If that report's coming back in July, I don't really see it. I mean, yeah,
and I don't
tend to have
feel
a similar view to Councillor Tozer, but I don't have a problem with it coming back.
Well, I'm really happy to be guided by the majority as always, but
absolutely.
It was just some concerns I thought I would ventilate amongst us before making the decision. But I would be grateful for advice from the city solicitor as well.
I think given the comments, I think if there isn't any urgency, and given, as you say, that report's coming back in July, I think that might be quite happy to support that. Yeah, I'm just going to go to Councillor Taylor unless that's what he was going to actually suggest. I'm not sure.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to get an understanding through Councillor Gates, the benefits of having someone on a panel and not having it. So I know we're talking one side saying that, you know, independent and not being on the panel. What is the, of having someone in, what do we hope to benefit by having that person on the panel?
I firmly believe a community input from the representatives that work closely in community. And that's not to say our view would be the view, but I would have hoped that there could be some contribution from the members of the council who guide the policy and decision-making in this city. That's my view, that it would be appropriate for some sort of involvement rather than just passing it over for a tick and flick and then for it to come back as a fait accompli to council.
Okay, so there's no impediment to no? Okay.
No, so you can bring it back after July if you want.
Yeah, so Councillor Gates, if you actually want to move that we defer that.
Okay, I'm happy to move that the report be noted and Or do you want me just, Director, to move for deferral until July 2021? Or do you want me to highlight why?
No, I think you can just defer to maybe to August. If the other report's coming in July, we might
Okay.
need to just wait to that.
That the report be noted and deferred to the Economy, Tourism and Events Committee meeting to be held in August. Pending, and we can just put in, if you like, pending advice from the city solicitor and consideration of a potential grants standing committee, something like that. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense, yeah. But Councillor Taylor, you happy to second? Yeah, okay.
Or maybe just say, and the potential of a, rather than consideration of, just, and the potential of a grants standing committee. Yeah. Because it may not be that the mayor wants one. I don't know.
Well, probably maybe not an official standing committee, but it could be a, I guess, like a subsidiary.
Well, I don't think it has a choice. So
Sorry?
I don't think it would have a choice. I think it may have to be
Really?
a standing committee. But I was
okay.
going to ask Nikki, the words that Councillor Gates is using there is that, so she talks pending advice from the city's solicitor and the potential of a grant standing committee. Is that
Yeah, add a V
is
there.
that not dissimilar to what
Yeah.
one of the options that might be in July?
Pursuant to council's decision under the Local Government Act, so you don't really even need to say potential, you could say pending council's determination of a new grant standing committee.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I can reflect that in the report that I can echo.
Because
that.
that's going to be one of the options, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I think it lawfully has to be a standing committee rather than just a group of two councillors or four councillors.
Yeah, I was just thinking whether it was like an advisory committee, which then comes back to the committee in the same way that we used to do that with events or whatever. You don't think that's
I don't think so.
could be lawfully done under the new? Okay, all right.
These could be
Oh, that's
determined
fine.
under that
Just
same
August is
remit,
fine.
depending
Okay.
in terms of reference.
Okay, right, okay. All right. Do you want to speak against it? Oh, well, I should go to Councillor Gaze in case she wants to speak for it first, because, I mean, she's... so.
Look, Chairman, just briefly, I would prefer to have that advice before we move forward. I'm not wedded to any outcome in any particular way, but I was purely seeking the consideration of my colleagues to see how they felt about it. And I don't see any harm, as the Director has indicated, that there's no urgency in getting the advice from the city solicitor and waiting for what's already been put in process for a report about a grant standing committee. I just sort of don't see the point of us examining that possibility and then not including the very first grant process that comes before us after that's already been commenced. So
Yeah.
that's my reasoning.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Gaze. So I'll go to Councillor Tozer to speak against.
I'm actually supportive of the officer's recommendation on a couple of grounds. Firstly, I think the art sector in the city has gone through a very difficult time, and it is entirely timely and appropriate for us to be taking strong steps towards finding ways that we can rebuild both the tourism and art sectors in our city. I think this is a unique program which it sounds like Councillor Gates is actually very supportive of, and I suppose I don't want to sound like I'm arguing with Councillor Gates for no reason, but I actually don't see any particular reason to delay, and also I don't see any particular reason why councillor oversight of grant allocations adds value to our processes given the vast majority of grant allocations have been strongly supported by councillors. No doubt there has been some incidences from time to time where the views of councillors perhaps should have been considered, or greater scrutiny of decision making and funding allocations should have been applied. But I think they're few and far between, and in the main, our processes in relation to grant allocations are good. And result in great community and investment outcomes. That being said, I don't think there's any reason to delay to support the arts and tourism sectors in our city, and I think this delay to see council overseeing what are effectively subjective arts decisions, I think that's not prudent, and I can't support the motion as it currently stands.
I'll just see if anyone else wishes to speak. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. I will support that, and as Councillor Tozer pointed out, I'm quite sure that Councillor Gates is very supportive, as I am, of our arts industry and supporting them any way we can. This is just about process and identifying that we get that right. And also, my other reason for supporting this is exactly out of Councillor Tozer's words. He just said that there is no doubt that in some circumstances there was a need for greater scrutiny. So by looking potentially at having residents' representatives, it's probably 1 out of 20 times that influence may make a difference to consider that perspective. And it's really just for those times where he said that there's no doubt that has been needed on occasion. So that's all. We can have a look at it.
Okay. Happy to change that from a meeting to be held in August to a future committee meeting. I haven't got a seconder yet, so I'm quite comfortable in making this change, and then the chair seeking a seconder.
Actually, I think you did actually have a seconder. You had Councillor Taylor actually seconded it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's not on the screen. But if we just say a future committee, I think the directors pointed out that we may be able to bring it forward more quickly. I was going to ask, through you, Chairman, to the director, when the likelihood would be of the distribution of these funds, if this is going to delay in any significant way anything that I'm unaware of.
So through the chair, Councillor Gates, I think it will delay it. Obviously it's only by several months, but as in we will have to provide the money in a budget review if we don't make the decision today. But what I was thinking is if we have it a future, then it gives me a chance to go and talk to the city solicitor before full council, and it might be able to be something that we can give advice on in between committee and full council.
That sounds fine. Thank you very much. So
really
happy with that, and if we can get that advice quickly and deal with it promptly, that's
Terrific.
great.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Debate closed. So the motion before us moved Councillor Gates, seconded Councillor Taylor. Based on that, yeah, I'm certainly happy to support it. We may actually be able to get this resolved at full council. So we'll take the vote. All those in favour? Okay. Against? Do you want to be noted, Councillor Tozer? You would? Okay. Please note Councillor Tozer voted in the negative. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 4. Unless there are any questions, I mean, the report, from my point of view, the report's microphone. Here we go. Unless there are any questions, the report for me seemed to be quite self-explanatory as such. So quite happy to move the item. But of course, if anyone wants to debate it, second to Councillor Gates. Does anyone wish to debate the item, or?
No, I need to note it was very clear on page 62 that UNESCO responded to our request and seemed fairly straightforward about what they thought about it. Without wanting to be over-engineering an outcome here, they wrote pretty clearly what they thought.
They did. So yeah. So we're happy to take the vote on that. Okay, with the recommendation on the screen, which still leaves it open for us to maybe bring this back at a later date. So, all right, well, I've moved that. Seconded Councillor Gates will take the vote. All those in favour? That is carried. Councillors, before we move into to close session, is there any general business that anyone wished to raise? No? Okay. In which case, look, item 5, which concerns the Gold Coast Show funding, I would propose that we move into closed session for the reasons that it does actually affect the local government's budget negotiations, and it's a commercial in confidence matter as a result. So I would move us into close. Seconded Councillor Gates. I would take the vote. All those in favour? That is carried. in open session and... Oh.
I can hear you now.
Okay, thanks, Steph. Okay, all right. Okay, so... okay, councillors, thanks very much for the debate and all the considerations. There is a motion on the screen, which I am moving. It's been seconded by Councillor McDonald. I don't feel I feel that the motion's pretty self-explanatory, and I don't really need to speak to it at all. So, yes, just so everyone can see what's there. So that is moved, seconded Councillor McDonald. Do
you mind if I speak against it?
Take the vote.
Do you mind if I speak against it?
Thank
you.
You have the right to speak against. I wasn't going to speak for, but
no.
Yes.
So look, what the motion before us today proposes to allocate $210,000 over the coming 3 years to the Gold Coast Show Society, and I feel concerned that that quantum of funding and that certainty over 3 years, it doesn't seem to align with the financial records that have been provided to us, which are confidential. But I can't support this motion in its current form because of that those circumstances.
Okay. All right. We will close debate on the matter, and we'll take the vote. All those in favour, and just myself and Councillor McDonald. All those against? Okay, so the motion is lost. Okay, does any... okay, well, the motion's lost. Does anyone else have a motion?
In closed session, I foreshadowed the officer's recommendation, but with your consent, I withdrew that.
Yeah, okay. So the...
Well, it didn't have to second up.
It never does.
No, because it was foreshadowed, and so it wasn't seconded as it was foreshadowed, and I was quite happy or comfortable for Councillor Tozer to withdraw that. So the motion is lost. So
I'm happy to move a procedural motion that the matter be considered by full council.
Okay, procedural motion on the table from Councillor Tozer that this matter to be deferred to the council meeting to be dealt with there. Do I have, a seconder for that? It's Councillor Taylor. Councillors, we've got a procedural motion. It's been moved and seconded that this matter be deferred to full council. In fact, we don't need a seconder for a procedural motion, do we? Yes, we do. Of course we do.
Yeah, you do.
Yes. All right. All those in favour? That is carried. The matter is will be dealt with at full council. Is there a... no, there isn't. We asked about general business before. I declare the meeting closed.